Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Red Lettuce. Tonight we are joined with Ramiro. He's a co-editor at AntiConquista. Ramiro was recently in Haiti and Honduras, and he was covering some of the social movements and protests happening there. And we have been so excited to do this show with you because these are topics we've been really interested in. We aren't. We've been looking for someone to have with knowledge about these particular situations, and you have firsthand experience there. Before we get started, can you tell people where to find your work and tell us about the time frame that you've been in and out of Haiti and Honduras?
For sure. So thanks for having me, comrades. I really appreciate being on the Red Lettuce. I like the show that y'all produce a lot. I like the name as well. It's pretty chill. And I like the fact that y'all are yourselves. You know, there's a lot of leftist, socialist channels and podcasts out there. And I feel like sometimes they're too stiff and too rigid. And I like y'all because it's a very human element and just real people talking. And so I'm really appreciative to be on speaking with y'all. And I was recently, first of all, I'm the co-editor of AntiConquista, which is an anti-imperialist media collective. We produce content by and for the Latin American Caribbean diaspora. And I was in Haiti in 2019 twice. I was covering the huge protests, the uprisings against Jovenel Moïse, the right-wing US-backed president in Haiti. I was out there filming an independent mini doc with a few other outlets. We were covering the protest, and it was huge. It was one of the most inspirational moments of my life to see the Haitian people, no phones in sight, everybody in the moment protesting, everybody was on the same page, and it was just really cool. I was also in Honduras in 2020, and I have visited Honduras on several times. I've been active in the Honduran resistance movement to the US-backed coup in 2009. So I've been part of the FNRP, Frente Nacional de Resistencia Popular, which is the National Popular Resistance Front that was formed after the coup, which comprises of several left-wing indigenous, Afro-Indigenous organizations. And that's pretty much it. I've been active in, I've been traveled to Haiti and Honduras extensively, and the two poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere, the most oppressed countries in the Western Hemisphere. And there's so much revolutionary organizing and activism there that we can learn from here in the United States.
Yeah, I actually want to get into it. It might not be surprising that the U.S. bourgeoisie media ignores the political situation currently taking place in Haiti and Honduras, given that they're both U.S.-backed dictatorships run by right-wing criminals who impose neoliberal economic policies on the masses, who are rising up and struggling for independence. But let's begin with Haiti. What led up to the current US-backed puppet dictator and his regime? How has it fueled the uprisings we are seeing? And how has the revolutionary legacy of 1804 continued to live on in the people of Haiti today?
I think the 1804 Revolution of Haiti is a great place to start. We always have to put things into historical context. The fact that Haiti is the first free Black republic, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but all over the world before many African countries were able to win liberation. Haiti from day one has been the rebellious kid in the classroom that wasn't scared of the teacher who was rude and mean, and is that country in the continent, in the region, that has led the example for revolutionary movements. For example, in 1804 was the Haitian Revolution. Toussaint and Dessalines were the main leaders of the revolution. Interestingly enough, they were also involved in Freemasonic lodges that played a revolutionary role at the time. They were in similar lodges with Simón Bolívar in South America from Venezuela, who created La Gran Colombia, which includes Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador. And he also played a role in liberating Bolivia as well. And Bolívar, it was in no way possible what he did without help from Haiti. If you actually look at the flags today of Venezuela and Colombia and Ecuador, you'll notice that it's yellow, blue, red. And the first bottom part is blue and red after Haiti, after the Haitian flag, which is blue and red. And the Haitian Revolution was the spark that ignited the independence movements across Latin America. Shortly after 1804, you had 1810, La Gran Colombia, Venezuela, all these other countries. In Central America, Francisco Morazan, who was also involved with the Freemasonic lodges that were connected to Haiti, that were revolutionary against the Spanish at that time period. They also were inspired by Haiti. You had countless uprisings as well in Louisiana and the quote unquote German coast of Louisiana. In 1811, there was a huge uprising in Louisiana that was inspired by the Haitian Revolution of enslaved Africans. So Haiti from day one has been the center of revolutionary activity in the Western Hemisphere. And for that reason, for that role in revolutionary history, Haiti has been punished. We know that since declaring independence, Haiti has been forced to pay these reactionary colonial debts to France. We know that Haiti has been purposely plundered and exploited by France and what they call the core countries, US, Canada, France, as well as the UK. We know that Haiti has been isolated. So throughout the history of Haiti, the US has made sure to get rid of any leftist, democratically elected leaders who want to reignite that revolutionary momentum. And one of the main people who was involved in that was former President John Bertrand Aristide. He was removed in a coup twice when he was president of Haiti, once in 1991 and 2004, correct me if I'm wrong. I actually got the chance to meet him. I was lucky enough to meet him when I was in Haiti. Once, it was very down low. I was there doing some journalistic work covering the protests, and I actually got a chance to meet him. I got to meet some of the comrades with La Valace, which is the leftist party in Haiti. La Valace in Creole means flood, and it represents the huge protests that you see when people literally flood the streets. And so the name reflects that, La Valace, the flood. And it's cool because that's literally what it is. When I was there and I saw the protests happening, I'm talking about tens of thousands of people rushing and defending themselves against the police. At one point, the police were shooting where we were at, where some of the journalists were at covering. And it was pretty intense and scary, but the people there had my back. There was people there who were from La Valace and other left-wing groups as well in Haiti who do really good work. And basically, Haiti, since Aristide was removed twice, Haiti has a very similar political situation to Honduras, where my family's from, where it's been nonstop right-wing US-backed neoliberal governments that want to keep the nation poor and oppressed as a captive market. Because what's interesting is that there are a lot of corporations who are invested in keeping Haiti neoliberal, keeping Haiti right-wing. For example, a lot of the the manufacturing and clothing industry, a lot of sweatshops that once used to operate in Mexico and Central America, they have since moved to Haiti because the price of labor is cheaper. And Haiti has been kept as a captive market for many years, so that they can use it to leverage against the workers in other countries. So it's kind of like a kidnapping situation where you have somebody who's like, they have Haiti, a gun to Haiti's head. And they're like, okay, this person is going to do exactly what I say. And if you don't do what I want, I'm going to hit this person harder. I'm going to shoot this person. And that's really what it is. It's unfortunately been a captive market, but the resistance of the Haitian people is inspiring. Haiti, despite having so many right-wing US-backed presidents, they've been protesting for years, nonstop every week. And it's gotten almost no coverage because it's not to the benefit of the imperialist media, because of racism. And unfortunately, I got to say, even within the Latin American left, that's something that a contradiction that we've pointed out on AntiConquista is like the fact that there's not enough solidarity. But luckily we've been building solidarity. AntiConquista actually raised funds for groups out there to help out. And one of our comrades, Danny Shaw, co-host of Sons of Fidel, was out there as well. Shout out to Danny. And so we've been active in supporting Haiti. And for me, it's so inspiring to see the spirit of the Haitian people against capitalism and imperialism.
So what exactly led up to the current US-backed puppet dictator? Like, what's the situation there? Can you give us some of the history?
Yeah. So before the president now, Jovenel Moise, there was the previous president. He was actually a musician. His name is Sweet Mickey, his artist name. But he was also a right winger. He was also backed by US. We have to talk about, that's the thing with Haiti. There's so many things. The earthquake in 2010 was a huge event. The huge earthquake that rocked Haiti. We know that the Clinton Foundation and other liberal NGOs did horrible stuff out there. All these Oxfam, all these other NGOs that basically raised so much money, Red Cross, that they raised millions of dollars and nobody saw a single penny of it. Like when I was in Haiti, I was talking to people and they were like, yeah, we've never seen a single cent of that. All of that goes to like operational costs, which is just like people sitting on their ass, drinking wine and calling themselves philanthropists, you know, and it's just really a shame to see that. So after 2010 and after the election of quote unquote Sui Mickey, the musician, there was a lot of corruption in Haiti, but I think things really got bad under Jovenel Moise once he came into the picture around 2017, 2018. The biggest scandal for sure is the Petro-Caribe scandal. Petro-Caribe was a program that was started by former President Hugo Chavez from Venezuela. And part of that program is a great program. It gives oil for very cheap, zero interest loans or low interest loans to countries across the Caribbean. And it's also kind of like a bartering system as well. Like if there's sugar or other commodities that countries in the Caribbean have, they'll trade with Venezuela in exchange for oil, for heating. And so there was funds that were provided from Venezuela to Haiti as part of the Petro-Caribe program. And Moise's government was pocketing a lot of that money. And so many programs had to be privatized. They cut public spending. They issued neoliberal austerity reforms, crackdowns, and people started asking, where's the Petro-Caribe money? It's unaccounted for in the budget. And it became this rallying call. Where's the money? Where's the money? Or as they say in Haiti as well, overturn the cauldron being the funds or the coffers of the rich. And so to this day, Moise has never admitted or acknowledged his role in pocketing that money, even though it's completely obvious. We know that as well, the Moise has acted against President Maduro in Venezuela. So it's interesting that he has the audacity to take Venezuela's money, but then cooperate with the OAS and the US State Department, Pompeo and the US government against Maduro in Venezuela. And so that's been a big issue. And from then on, around 2017, 2018, is when the protests really started to intensify against Moise, calling for him to step down. He's had countless prime ministers step down. At this point, he's ruling completely in a dictatorial way. I don't even think
by decree.
By decree, exactly. He's ruling by decree. Like his cabinet doesn't even fuck with him. Like he's totally isolated. And it's just crazy because imagine if this was the case in Venezuela. Imagine if this was the case in Cuba or in Nicaragua or Bolivia, you know, aside from the coup government, it's a whole nother story. But Haiti gets no attention the same way Honduras gets no attention because it's a US colony. It's a puppet state of US imperialism. And so the protests in 2017 picked up again in 2018. In 2019, the protests were huge. I was there in April and October of 2019. I helped record documentary evidence as well of some of the massacres that were going on in Haiti. I personally went to a neighborhood called La Saline, which is one of the poorest. I think it's considered the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It's really oppressed and colonized. And it's, interestingly enough, the same neighborhood. It's right on the water of Port-au-Prince. It's right by the sea. It's the same neighborhood where enslaved Africans were first brought from Africa by the colonizers. So that area has a bed of revolutionary history. It's where John Bertrand Aristide first organized his churches. He was a liberation theologian, a Catholic priest. He, since, you know, is not involved with the Catholic Church anymore, but he's a leftist, progressive, interpreted Catholicism in a left-wing socialist direction. And that center, that neighborhood, you go to La Saline, I've never been somewhere that oppressed in terms of there's no running water, there's no sanitation. it's just, there's no stores, everything is locked down. Death squads come in at night. Like when we were there documenting footage of shootings and dead bodies, they were telling us that we had to leave by sunset because the death squads would drive around every night with like machine guns and just randomly start shooting to scare the fuck out of people, because that's where the bed of resistances, the protesters, come from. And it's also where a lot of the supporters of Dessalines, who was the independence hero, who was firmly anti-French, firmly anti-European resistance fighter, are based. And in 2019, I got to see that. I got to see the protest. I got to see the momentum. The people there, the revolutionary excitement of the people is just next level. And the crazy thing about it, I think what's interesting is that because Haiti is so oppressed, colonized, there is no labor bureaucracy. There is no NGO industrial complex. So the class divisions are so clear. It's like the state and the wealthy, who tend to be lighter skinned or mulatto, or tend to be foreigners who are wealthy, right? And then you have the majority, the 99%, the masses, who are African, who are poor, working class. And it's so clear. And it's interesting to see that, because it's so different from like the US, where they're like intersectional imperialism and NGOs and, you know, and there's so much more illusory stuff here, but there it's raw. The class struggle is raw in Haiti. It's out in the open. And to this day, the protests are still going on right now as we speak. People are out in the streets, have been almost every Friday going out and protesting. And we're talking tens of thousands of people. And there's almost no Western media coverage of it. The time when I was there, there was no other reporters there. Danny was there recently, and he said the same thing. There's no reporters out there. So it's just really crazy.
So who's giving the death squads weapons, and like who's supporting them?
That's a great question, because there was an article last year that came out. I think it was in the Miami Herald, but it was kind of buried from mainstream media. But it talked about these private security firms from the US that are invested heavy into Haiti. And so because because there's such a lack of support for Moise and for the government, even among the police, there's been protests of police in Haiti against the Haitian government, where there have been times when the police have actually fired guns against the troops in Haiti. That's another thing that we almost never hear about. So there's different factions within the Haitian police, right? Some of them have left and rebelled, and because they're not even getting paid, right? That's kind of like that old saying that warlords get killed once they can't feed their soldiers, you know? And so it's like, that's kind of happening in Haiti now. And so Moise and this right-wing government has had to rely on a lot of private security firms. And we're talking a lot of private security groups from the United States. There was recently a truck that was discovered in Haiti during the protests, that it had weapons from the US. It had like cash, US dollars in cash. It had like security exchanges. Moise was transferring money out of his bank through these private security firms. And so we see like private prisons, private police, that model is being exported, is being tested in Haiti right now as we speak. And it's going to be coming soon to the US when shit gets really bad. And it already is, you know, but we see the beginnings of that, the private police, you know, group, like companies associated with BlackRock, what is it, BlackRock?
Yeah.
Or Blackwater. I think
Blackwater
is like real estate or something. But yeah, Blackwater, like all that whole industrial complex of private police that was in Iraq, that was in Afghanistan, they're using it in Haiti, right-wing death squads. By the way, these are the same death squads that they use in other countries as well. In Venezuela, we saw that the coup attempt last year, they also contracted private security police firms from the US to try to invade Venezuela. We see death squads in Colombia and Honduras and Chile. So all over, these are US private security firms, police groups that are going out there, and their job is literally to kill protesters.
I love that this past few years we've heard nothing but cries of fascism from liberals, and like they're like salivating and stuff like that. Like if they knew this stuff was happening under Obama,
yeah,
they like, what would they say? Like that I don't think they'd call it fascism. Like it's so sad. It's so sad because that's fascism to me. Like that's when I hear these things, I'm hearing this is like privatized fascism, right? Like and they're means testing it in foreign countries, and you said they're starting to bring that here to the United States on the mainland, and yeah, that's kind of terrifying. That's really scary.
And that's the thing that people have to remember is like defund the police doesn't necessarily mean that the institution of policing is going away. It just means it's being privatized.
Right. And that like I've been, of course I support defunding the police here. But I'm worried about, we have such a powerful surveillance network here already. Like we don't even need police. Like we don't need bodies of police officers to stalk people. The state can do it through surveillance, and I mean they already do it. The Democrats signed up, or it was last year that they reauthorized or extended the Patriot Act, and this is what people are saying is the opposition to Trump and the Republican Party, and it's just maddening. Like it's absolutely infuriating. I can't talk with these people anymore. I can't talk with I struggle to talk with anarchists, and I struggle talking with liberals now, because you talk about these things out until you're out of breath, and then the moment you say the Clinton Foundation, they stop listening. They're and not every anarchist I talk to is like this, but most liberals, they still love Hillary Clinton, and I'm just like, anyway.
But yeah, Ramiro, you pointed out something really interesting. You said that Haiti has never really had a labor aristocracy, so the class divisions aren't. There's not a lot of divisions between the proletariat there, and I think that's what we're starting to see here in the U.S. The labor aristocracy has started to, it's been pretty much decimated, and I think that's creating revolutionary potential here in the U.S. more than ever than it has before, and that I think there's more. That it's also creating a more chance for class solidarity and revolutionary potential. So with that said, what can the proletariat in the US learn from the people of Haiti while also standing in solidarity and supporting their struggle for self-determination?
I think what the people of the US can learn from Haiti is the fact that there's also, along with class, obviously we support the liberation of the working class, industrial and agricultural workers. But I think that one important component that we can learn is the leading role of oppressed nationalities. Even though Haiti, we think of Haiti as being monolithic, right? We think of it is predominantly African Black country, the descendants of enslaved Africans. But I think there's a clear divide in Haiti between the ruling class, which is comprised a lot of people who are mixed race, who are mulatto, as you say in Spanish, or who are in some cases not even from Haiti at all, who maybe are from other countries, Lebanon, or from the Middle East or the US, who have just conducted business there for countless years and haven't really mixed with other people. And the vast majority of the people who are dark-skinned, who are Africans. And there's a clear divide when you see as well in Haiti that the poorest people, the most oppressed people tend to be darker skinned, tend to be more rooted in African identity and the African nation. And so I think one thing that we can learn is uplifting the centrality of oppressed nations within a class struggle. That's not to say that there's no role for people who aren't Black or Indigenous, or people who come from a more privileged background. After all, Engels himself, who had money, who came from a family, he was part of a revolutionary movement, but his role was more of like a supporting cast. He wasn't like the protagonist, but he was, you know, helping out any way he could. And I think that's something that we can learn in the US, that the national liberation of oppressed communities, Black, Indigenous people, Chicanos in the Southwest, is central to class struggle, and it has to be connected with class struggle. And they're not mutually exclusive. I think that we're seeing today a lot of trends that either focus completely on identity and identity politics and race as like the primary contradiction, but then there's also quote unquote class reductionists. I don't agree with that term. I think it's a liberal anti-communist term. But there's also some people who say, you know, all workers are equal, workers of the world unite, which I agree with more so, and I tend to lean on, but we have to recognize the special oppression faced by certain nationalities and certain people, and they have so much insight to offer. I think another lesson as well is that people in the US can learn from class struggle in Haiti is not to trust liberals and Democrats and the good cop face of imperialism and capitalism. And I think the people of Haiti are well aware of that and have suffered the consequences of that, because if you say Clinton, the last name Clinton in the US, people are like, if you go to like DC or something, people are like, oh my God, like progressive, da, da, da. But like you go to Haiti and they're like, oh my God, like that's evil. That's like right wing. For them, like Bush and Clinton are the same. Like they're two heads of the same imperialist snake. And I think they understand that duality better than people in the US. I think people in the US are stuck in this Democrat Republican false dichotomy, good cop, bad cop. And I think people in Haiti understand that much better, because both under the Democrats and the Republicans, it's been pretty bad. If anything, I would argue it was even worse under Democrats, in my opinion, because it was hidden and it was veiled. And so I think that's something that the Haitian people can teach revolutionaries in the US, is not to trust these false dichotomies of Coke, Pepsi, you know, good cop, bad cop.
That makes a lot of sense. We've been seeing a lot of this like third worldist stuff with the Settlers book and Sakai.
Oh my God.
And I'm wondering if you read that, what do you think about it? Because you said you thought like class reductionism was a communist term. I see a lot of people using Sakai to say like that it's useless to organize with white people here. Like they're almost like they're what's the word I'm looking for? We're almost like they're reinforcing like
we're class. We're like class collaborators, basically, is what he's saying.
Yeah, they're like reinforcing race science to say, oh no, don't organize with white people because.
Right.
Yeah. So, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I have read J. Sakai Settlers. I think, like any book, right, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. I think there's definitely some truths to it. I think there are some things that are a bit outdated about that book. I think that here's the thing, right? I think people on the left have to stop looking at stuff so religiously, or so like you either believe it or you don't. Like you can look at a book and there's things that are good and there's things that are bad. For example, there's YouTubers, like I listen to a lot of speeches on YouTube and people who call themselves quote unquote entrepreneurs, right? And they have videos about like 10 ways to improve your business, or 5 ways to be more productive. I don't agree with most of their politics. I don't agree with most of like their economics, but there's things that I can extract that are good, and there are things that I'll leave that are bad. And I think that the whole debate around Sakai and Settlers has been, again, in a very undialectical way of like, you either love it or hate it, it's good or bad. There's things that you can take from it that are definitely true. Like, yes, there is historically settlers and a class of people who benefited from colonialism. That said, I think that in 2021, some of the conditions have changed. It's very different. Like the class contradictions in the US more people are going into poverty. The US, I think within the next 5 to 10 years is going to have a huge economic crash. Yeah. And I think that organizing solely along the basis of race is very limited. It's not going to lead to the overthrow of empire. And I think that, of course, I support people working together of all backgrounds. At the end of the day, as Marxists, as communists, we're part of the working class first and foremost. But within that dialectical contradiction, we also have to recognize that, again, going back to the role of national liberation, is that while there is a working class, a global working class, it's important to highlight the struggles of Black, Indigenous, Asian people within that, because they were people who suffered some of the harshest extremes under capitalism and imperialism. You can look at Vietnam, you can look at Palestine, you can look at Latin America. And even going back to what we're talking about with Haiti and Honduras, is that our countries were the ones where all of the shit that people are going through in the US now, they experimented that shit on us first. You know what I'm saying? The forced sterilizations in Puerto Rico. And so I think for me, I always like to maximize unity. I think that it's important for Black and brown and indigenous communists to work with white comrades, to work together against imperialism. Our enemy is on Wall Street. Our enemy is based on class, you know. We have to bring that back. But at the same time, I think it's also important to uplift the voices of people who are of oppressed nationalities. And I think in that sense, I'm more of the line of Lenin and Stalin, who recognize the national. We actually did a education session a few weeks back on Stalin and the national question, if y'all want to check that out. But I definitely am more in line with that thinking of supporting international working class movement, but also supporting national liberation movements, and not just writing them off as bourgeois nationalism or narrow nationalism.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just think that a lot of the attitude I see from people who follow this book is like they've never read anything else. It's like Harry Potter.
Right.
Like Harry
I mean,
Potter.
Like who's ever denied? I don't know. I never read, like, for example, like Howard Zinn, like he never denies what Sakai has said, like in his book about like the history of settler colonialism. I think you can find that in most history books. I just think it's ridiculous. Like that this isn't the only book that has this information in it.
Right.
What we don't agree with is the conclusion that he comes to. It's wrong, and it just is divisive, and so
it's like people need to read this. I'm holding Capital Volume 1. People before even getting to settlers, like people need to go back to the basics, and that's been my debate too. Like with people within the left or among comrades who are also anti-colonial, is like people write off Marx as just like this white racist horrible guy. I'm like, dude, read Marx. Like, don't even. But it's like, you know, it's one of those things where I always try to meet people where they're at on both sides, right? I'm like, yo, like read Marx before you read Sakai. Like don't get to dessert before you've had your veggies yet, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. I just want to like, my friend Eric Arbour said something that really, I think, nails it on the head on this topic. He said, I just want to share this quote that he said on a recent live stream he was on. There's this misunderstanding that if you're the most marginalized in the US, then you're automatically the most revolutionary subject. What we should understand is that the most revolutionary subject is someone who was promised something and never received it, or it was taken away from them. That's the entire working class. And I think that is something I think that's the kind of mindset we should kind of adopt and go with, I think, especially here in the US.
Yeah,
because it seems like that people aren't trying to challenge empire when they say that, oh, revolution can only come from colonized people and indigenous people. And it's almost like they're kind of tokenizing those identities to just kind of put all of the or put all of the responsibility to challenge empire
right
on colonized people. And that's what we really don't agree with. I think that's super racist. I mean, I think that's really fucked up.
It is.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realize that's what they're saying or what they're doing, because then when you like make arguments about Joe Biden or like the good cop, you know, people get really upset, and it's like you are defending empires so hard right now, but you're also saying that we've got to like support indigenous people all over the world, but
yeah,
we're means testing death squads all over the world. So it just is like navigating like that discourse has been really, I've been trying to like do what you do and like kind of, you know, not necessarily like find a middle ground. Like it feels weird to say that, but like yeah, I'm with you on that, because a lot of my friends and a lot of people I know, they are like starting to have this conversation more and more and more and more, and I'm seeing it a lot. So thank you for answering that.
For sure. I think it's a good question to ask, and I always tell people like the important, like Hugo Chavez used to say, right? Unidad, unidad y más unidad. Unity, unity, and more unity. And I think one of the problems with the left today is so much infighting, so much like, oh, you believe that? Well, I believe this. Like you're wrong. It's just like, dude, like
so
let's unite. Yeah, let's take down the empire first. Let's unite against our class enemy. And as we're doing that, we can resolve these other contradictions. But I think that people focus so much, they treat it, again, going back to this idea of people treating Marxism as a religion, you know, or a dogma. And I think a big part of that issue is the fact that they're not reading the fundamentals. They're not understanding the dialectical materialist way of reality, that contradiction exists in everything. And it's not a religion. It's not either or. And I think that's what we need to get back to.
Yeah, we definitely need to normalize having slight differences and still working together and having solidarity. It's totally fine to have disagreements and still work together.
Right, exactly.
But it's super racist to say that, oh, no, I'm just going to vote for Joe Biden and let colonized people do all the work for me.
Right. Yeah, and it's also failing to acknowledge that right now the U.S. imperialist system is so invested in intersectionality and getting tokens and being like, oh, you can do it too. And like for example, I have more in common with a white working class person who's a communist in, like, let's say West Virginia, than someone like America. Do you guys know who America Ferreira is?
Yeah.
So she's from Honduras too, right? Like we're both from Honduras, but she's like total DNC, like Joe Biden. She's in all these like Hollywood sitcoms, and she is part of the beast, you know. She's part of Hollywood, like, and they want that, because they want to. That's why we're seeing all this movies and stuff trying to cater to Black and brown people, because the imperialists know like their bottom line is money and profits. That's ours has to be like that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they profit off like us being divided over this like new like woke imperialist or anti-racism stuff. It serves to divide the working class even further. So all this Sakai shit, all this woke imperialist, woke ultra identity reductionism just serves the imperialists even more.
And I do also love that, like, as to my knowledge, the only Asian American in Joe Biden's cabinet has relations, or what's her position? Her job is to like work with, like, deal with China or whatever, and then and then the guy, the Raytheon guy is a Black man, and I think we're gonna see like a more sinister version of imperialism, because I think a lot of people are gonna fall for their tricks. But let's bring it back to our topics, I think this is a good segue. Can you tell us a short story about the 2009 Honduran coup and why the U.S. would support a coup there, and like what were some of the advantages the Obama administration were hoping to gain? Why was Zelaya in the way, and how did he challenge the U.S. empire?
So in terms of Honduras, I think we have to also, the same way we provide the context for Haiti, we also have to provide the context for Honduras geopolitically in the region. So my father is from a region called Choluteca. It's on southeastern Honduras, which borders Nicaragua. It's a 10 or 15-minute drive from Nicaragua. And Choluteca is where the Contras, the counter-revolutionaries, were trained in the 1980s. So for folks who don't know, in 1979, there was the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua. Back then, the Sandinistas were Marxist-Leninists. Now they're Christian socialists, but that's a different conversation. But it was a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla movement uprising. They overthrew the right-wing Somoza dictatorship that was backed by the United States for decades, since the 30s, all the way until 1979. The Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional was named after Augusto César Sandino, who was an indigenous socialist revolutionary who fought against U.S. Marines in Nicaragua. So in 79, the Sandinistas won. They began the construction of socialism, redistributing land, alphabetizing the population, bringing literacy campaigns. And this was very dangerous to the US imperialist empire, especially in Latin America. Let's not forget that up to that point, there had only been two successful socialist movements in Latin America, one revolutionary being Cuba, of course, 1959, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and others. The second being 1970, the election of Salvador Allende and the Unidad Popular, the Popular Unity Coalition in Chile. They won through the elections, and Salvador Allende was a Marxist socialist, and he began the process as well of nationalization. And obviously, we know in 1973, the US removed Allende in a US-backed coup with the Chicago Boys, implemented neoliberalism. So 1979, Nicaragua, the success of the Sandinista revolution, was a big FU to the US imperialists, because they thought they had gotten rid of the quote unquote virus of socialism by getting rid of Allende. They were like, okay, neoliberalism is now here, like only Cuba's left, they're isolated. And then you have Nicaragua, which was at that point one of the poorest countries in the hemisphere, have a successful revolution both in the countryside and in the cities that overthrew a US-backed government. That was a very serious threat for the US imperialists, and actually was one of the pitching points that Reagan used in his campaign for presidency. We know that he came into power in the 80s and began supporting the Contras, the counter-revolutionaries. And so basically at that time period, we saw the use of the strategy of attacking the left from the left and trying to claim the Sandinistas were horrible, that they were racist, that they were all these things. And so they trained, and shout out to my friend Caleb. I know you guys had him on before. He has covered this before, the role of counter gangs, right? They use this against the Mau Mau in Kenya, and they use this as well in Angola against the MPLA. They did this in Nicaragua with the Contras. So the Contras were these right-wing death squads. They portrayed them as revolutionaries, as heroes. Keep in mind, this was happening at the same time that the US was funding the Mujahideen and Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. And they were also securing opium, poppy, their drug production. And the Contras were drug runners for drug cartels in South America, and were bringing cocaine, shipping cocaine from Nicaragua and Honduras to the United States. And so my dad was from that hometown where the Contras were trained, Choluteca, and he told me stories. Actually, I was just talking with him recently about the Contras. He would say that they would walk in to bars with like bags of money that said USAID, with like stacks of money and like guns, and they would just shut down the whole bar. They're like, we're gonna party here tonight, and they would like do drugs. They would like kill and torture people who were suspected of being communists or sympathizers of the Sandinistas. And so Honduras and that border region became very important for the US imperialists as a bastion of imperialism against Nicaragua, right? Because again, during the 80s, the Sandinistas were still in power in a very similar way that today Colombia is a bastion of resistance to Venezuela and socialism. The US uses it as a colony, right, to attack Venezuela. So it's a very similar dynamic where you have this neighboring country. And so geopolitically, Honduras has access to both oceans. Central America is the most narrow part of the hemisphere where you have access to both the Atlantic and the Pacific seas. You have access to North and South America. So geopolitically, it's very important. It's also where 90% of cocaine that goes into the US comes in through Honduras. And so it's very important geopolitically for the US. There's no natural resource that is like oil or copper that's like extremely valuable, but it's mainly its strategic location, the same way that Afghanistan is located close to China, close to Russia, close to Iran. And so Honduras plays that role. You know, the US needs Honduras to be subjected, colonized, so that it can control other countries. Again, in that time period in the 80s, next door in El Salvador, you have the FMLN. That was an indigenous guerrilla movement that was also successful. Literally, they were like on the verge of taking over the whole country, building socialism. And this is already closing, and Guatemala as well. So this is already closing in close to the US. This is within Reagan's like, oh my God, communism is at our doorstep. They even had a Time magazine cover with Daniel Ortega on the side. So it's like, communism is soon reaching our doorstep. So Honduras was important for the imperialists, has been, to fight off against any form of Latin American socialism. And so, and also one last thing with Honduras is also where they trained right-wing Cuban death squads from Miami for Bay of Pigs and other operations, and send them from Honduras and to Cuba to attack people. So geopolitically, it's very important. And so fast forward to 2005, 2006, we see Manuel Zelaya, who although he came from a wealthy cattle ranching family, he kind of betrayed his class interests, and he talked about redistributing land, uplifting peasants, campesinos, and workers, talking about giving land back to indigenous people, to Garifuna people on the coast, Afro-Indigenous people. And he became very popular, eventually became president, and believe in 2006 or 2007, if I'm not mistaken. And he was extremely demonized for many years at that time, because now Daniel Ortega, who's the president of Nicaragua, he had been reelected in 2006. He came back with the Sandinistas, and Manuel Zelaya now was elected. So now you're talking about Nicaragua and Honduras having left-leaning presidents. Again, the context is the pink tide, right? Hugo Chavez came president in 1999 in Venezuela and was beginning ALBA, the Alianza Bolivariana para la Soberanía de Sudamérica, the unity of Latin American countries. In Ecuador, you had Rafael Correa, you had Evo Morales in Bolivia, you had Lula in Brazil, Kirchner in Argentina. So like all these countries moving to the left, the pink tide. And a lot of people on the left go into these purity spirals. They're like, oh, they're not real social. But it's like within the context of Latin America, that's never happened, where you have such a wave of leftist Latin American leaders come together and like, yo, we're going to make our own banks, our own economy, separate from the US. That's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? And so Manuel Zelaya was part of that. And actually the coup happened right around the same time that Honduras joined ALBA, which is that organization, the Bolivarian Alliance. They formally entered it with Venezuela. He had just visited Venezuela, met with Chavez. And so that was kind of the bottom line for the US. They're like, nope, we got to cut that shit. And so this is Obama's one of his first foreign operations. It was mainly more Hillary Clinton that was involved in it and pushing it. She was Secretary of State. They removed Zelaya. They claimed, so he wanted to have a referendum on changing the Constitution to get rid of term limits, because in the Constitution, they only allowed one-term presidencies, which is shitty. And I disagree with, because then you have people who just go in for 4 years and have their own agenda, and then they bounce, and then there's just a revolving door of nonsense, you know? And so he wanted to change it so that they can get rid of term limits. Obviously, he wanted to stay in longer so they can have 10-year plans, 15-year plans to build socialism in the country. They claimed they were like, oh my God, the next Venezuela. They created a campaign against him. June 28th, 2009, like 2 a.m, he was in his pajamas. The Honduran military came in, they kidnapped him in a helicopter. They flew him to Costa Rica and they left him there. Costa Rica has no army, so that's why they took him there. They left him there in his PJs. He's like, what the fuck is going on? And then basically at that point, the Honduran military rules. The National Party comes into power, which is a right-wing, evangelical, homophobic, right-wing, like horrible party. And they killed a lot of activists. They killed a lot of LGBTQ leaders. They killed a lot of indigenous leaders, Black Garifuna leaders who were resisting the coup. And since then, it's been a complete nightmare in Honduras. We see it became one of the most dangerous countries in the Western Hemisphere, if not still is, in terms of the crime rate, because everything has been privatized. We see the rise of drug trafficking, gangs, MS-13, killings, assassinations of environmental Berta Cáceres, who just a few days ago was the anniversary of her assassination. She was killed, you know what I'm saying? Margarita Murillo, who's an activist that I personally knew. I met when I was in 2012 in Honduras. She was an indigenous socialist activist who had visited the Soviet Union and Cuba. She was like a hardcore socialist. She got murdered as well. Her kids had to flee. You know, a lot of the people in those caravans right now are people who are connected to leftist movements, who are forced to leave the country because of death threats, because of privatization. So it's just, if you want a perfect example of the chaos of the free market, the anarchy of capitalism, look at Honduras today. You know, everything is privatized. Everything is completely, any public services are cut, and it's just a complete nightmare. And so since then, we've been fighting for any left-wing progressive movement to be able to take back power.
Thank you for bringing up Berta, because that's my next question for you. That's the next thing I want to talk about. So 5 years ago, like you said, the Honduran activist Berta was murdered by the Honduran military forces who were trained by the United States. Many murders were also carried out against LGBT Honduran activists. What's the connection with all of these killings with Berta and with LGBT activists? Why target LGBT activists, and who else is behind these killings? How is the U.S. supporting the Honduran military?
Yeah, there's a strong connection, and a lot of times people don't make the connections because the people who have been hardest hit by this right-wing coup government, the National Party government, have been indigenous people, LGBTQ people, Black people, women, and poor people, right? And one of the names, the elephant in the room in Honduras, that is frequently not mentioned, but plays a big role in supporting the current government, is Israel, the state of Israel. So the Honduran government is actually one of the most ferocious supporters of the state of Israel. The National Party officially is an evangelical party. They're an evangelical right-wing party that supports the state of Israel. They do not support Palestinian freedom. They follow Zionism. You know, again, there's a difference between Zionism and Judaism, whole nother conversation, but they believe that Israel should exist. They believe Palestinians have no right to their land. And they also, as evangelicals, believe that marriage is between man and a woman. They believe in the quote unquote nuclear family. And so that's kind of what ties together a lot of different oppressed sectors of society in Honduras. In Guatemala as well, I think they were the only two countries that voted for recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It was like Honduras, Guatemala, and the United States. And I think like Ukraine or one other country, but very few.
Another
right?
country where we could
Right. That's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, so basically Zionism is very strong in Honduras. When I was there in 2020, all of the Catholic leftist churches, because in Central America, the Catholic Church has historically, it's played several roles, but they've traditionally sided more with the left and the liberation theology movement. Recently, the evangelical right-wing churches have stepped in and supported the National Party, which has been backed. Israel also helps arm, train, and support the Honduran military. They provide spyware technology to spy on activists, to spy on environmentalists. And part of the idea of Zionism is this concept that there is no respect for the indigenous peoples, the Palestinians, or the Philistines, as they were known before, that they're backward, that they don't have like the correct ideas. And that's kind of how the right-wing National Party in Honduras views the indigenous people. They're like, we need to get rid of them, these native people, from their lands. Like they don't do anything with their lands. We, like, if you hear the way some of the Zionists talk about like Tel Aviv, they're like, before we were here, it was just like a desert shithole, and now we have all these nightlife and stuff. You know what I mean? And so they kind of say the same thing, the National Party of Honduras, about indigenous people. They're like, we're developing, we're doing this. So that's one similarity. The anti-LGBTQ hate for sure stems from the right-wing evangelical nature of the National Party. The crackdowns on the activists and the spying definitely comes from Israel's model of weapons manufacturing. The Israeli government also supported the Contras in Nicaragua. They also support the Colombian government. They support in Chile as well, Sebastián Piñera, the right-wing government. So it's played a secret role like that not a lot of people talk about, you know what I'm saying? So it's not just the US, but the US and Israel together have played that role. And that's kind of what connects all of these different oppressed sectors together, is like, you know, they're outcasts, they're marginalized, they're not seen as productive, they're not seen as welcome. And so that's really kind of what binds everybody together. I mean, I think Bolivia is another great example. Look at the coup that happened in 2019 against Evo Morales. Janine Áñez, who's a right-wing evangelical, and evangelicals are the biggest supporters of the state of Israel, more so, I think, even than a lot of Jewish people who tend to be more anti-Zionist and support Palestinian human rights. But the evangelicals, they have this like obsession with the state of Israel, and they hate indigenous people. And you remember Janine Áñez came when she took power in the coup. She was like, the Bible rules now here, like no more getting rid of this idea of Pachamama or Mother Earth. So it's also, there's that element as well.
And she also like on Twitter advocated for killing like getting rid of like indigenous, what was the word she used? Like, and she said infestation, or she made some reference to like bugs or insects or something, like an invasive like species of pests, and like that type of like that's a fascist dog whistle. And of course she was recognized by the United States. So like what I'm hearing, a lot of what you're saying is that like they're looking at the class, they're like capitalists are looking at their class interests, right?
Exactly.
So sorry, Eric, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no. I just wanted to say, just before you get attacked by Zionists and saying that you're anti-Semitic, I just want to say, as a Jewish person, I'm Jewish, and I co-sign what Ramiro said, because anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. So if you're going to do that shit, you can fuck off.
Exactly.
Yes.
And free Palestine. Okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
100. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of what you're saying, it sounds like the capitalists are looking at production and development, right? So they're looking out for their class interests. So in response to that, we should also be looking at our own class interests instead of making these anti-Indigenous, anti-LGBT governments friendlier to those issues. That's if I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you know, it's there's so much unity that needs to be made among different oppressed sectors, and I think in Honduras there's so many sectors there's also on the left they also have to overcome homophobia and transphobia. That's a big issue as well. That's another contradiction. You know, it's something that, you know, me personally, I'm an atheist. I'm not Catholic, but Honduras is like 90% Catholic or something, you know, so there's still that exists within the left.
Right.
People view homophobia. I mean, they view LGBTQ people as horrible. So there's so much more that unites us, but we have to overcome these divisions of hate, you know, that are not useful to our class.
These internal oh gosh, I'm losing all my words today. I don't know what it is. These internal contradictions within our own class interests, they can be dealt with at the same time. You know, we can care about a lot of things. One of my good friends, Samer, he's Palestinian, he's queer. He talks a lot about homophobia in the Arab world and in Palestine. That's a talking point that a lot of people will use to legitimize the Israeli government. Oh, well, they're friendlier to gays, but they're supporting a government in Honduras that's slaughtering LGBT activists and people. And Samer says, period, fuck the Israeli government. Okay, liberation, he says, liberation for my people. And he's such an inspiration to me. I love him so much.
We love him.
Yeah, and we had him on a while ago. It was the last episode we did with our other vegan co-host. But yeah, it just it's really sad to hear that a lot of these people that we see as like progressive heroes in the United States, Hillary Clinton, supporting these and organizing these paramilitary coups and governments that kill indigenous people and queers.
So should I ask the next one? I'll ask the next one.
Yeah, go for it. It's the last one right there.
How does Juan Orlando Hernandez get support from the U.S.? Where is the next election in Honduras? Oh, I'm sorry. When is the next election in Honduras, and will Zelaya run again?
That's a great question. So Juan Orlando Hernandez, he is supported. He loved Trump. It's crazy because when I was in Honduras in 2020.
Oh, wait, and I want to add, his campaign, wasn't it ran and funded by drug money
cartels?
El Chapo?
Yeah, it was. So El Chapo revealed in some of the court documents that he helped finance Juan Orlando Hernandez's re-election campaign. His brother Tony Hernandez, who a lot of people started calling him Tony Montana in Honduras.
It's so funny because they charged Maduro with this.
Right, exactly. They charged Maduro with it, even though they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? No. Like, there's, you know, and Honduras is, everything they say about Venezuela is true about the other countries. But basically, Juan Orlando Hernandez's brother, Tony Hernandez, he is also in the National Party. He was convicted with drug charges in New York. And El Chapo is connected to that because it's part of a transnational scheme and operation that's carried out by drug cartels, by the right-wing forces. And it all connects to as well the Mexican government, the Mexican security forces that are heavily invested in the drug trade, that use Honduras as a transit point to get drugs from South America and bring it from Honduras into Mexico and then across the United States. Juan Orlando Hernandez, he is very emblematic of the right-wing nationalists, the old school Latin American dictator, Fulgencio Batista type, that rules by strength, that rules by decree, that rules by law and quote unquote law and order. He is heavily supported by the Republican Party in the United States. I think the liberals and the Democrats want to stay the fuck away from him because he kind of ruins their rap, right? They would prefer, the liberals, the Democrats, they prefer to have somebody who is quote unquote more in the middle or moderate, who's not too controversial, because that they're all about optics. You always hear liberals say that, the optics, you know, and so like it doesn't look good, right? If you're supporting a president that's like directly connected to the drug industry. Also, Juan Orlando Hernandez, the previous president, Porfirio Lobo, he was also connected to the drug trade as well. And these are all people going back. Again, they made their name. Juan Orlando Hernandez and Porfirio Lobo, these are guys who got cuts from the Contras. They were directly involved in training and helping facilitate US and Israeli troops to train the Contras to help smuggle drugs from Honduras into the United States. A lot of private security firms, just like in Haiti, a lot of private security firms from the US help train and support the Honduran military. And so I think his biggest support comes from right wingers, from Republicans, from evangelicals, play a huge role. Israel, I think that's sort of the faction that he represents. And kind of like going back to that example of Haiti, where the class contradiction is so raw. There is no labor aristocracy. There is no like liberal. There is a liberal party of Honduras, but they're very weak. The U.S. government would prefer that. They would want somebody who's more like, for example, Colombia, who had Juan Manuel Santos, who was kind of more quote unquote liberal. He approved gay marriage and stuff like that. You know, they will prefer somebody like that, right? That's not as controversial. But Juan Orlando Hernandez, he's just openly, everybody knows he's in the drug trade. It's no secret. But it's the same thing like Haiti, where it's just like, because it's a US colony and because it doesn't get media attention, there's nothing that happens. But luckily, people are still protesting and resisting.
You have given us so much information, like just really, really well laid out, really easy to follow, which is a revolutionary act on its own, to be honest, given this, given our like oversaturated academic, like activist industrial complex kind of shit. So thank you for laying it all out like raw and just honestly, I am truly sorry for some of the horrible things that you've seen and experienced. And I appreciate that you've done that work to follow these issues so closely and so personally, even putting your life at risk. So thank you for sharing that with us. Are there any is there anything that didn't get brought up that you think you might want to touch on or ask us or anything that didn't get said?
I would just say that, and this is not specifically related to Haiti or Honduras, but the left in general, I think people have to constantly keep learning, discussing. We're all students. There's something from everybody that we can learn from each other. And we should always have that humility to be like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, let me learn about that. Let me study that. And I think on the left, like, unfortunately, that's missing, where people treat it like a religion. They treat it like, oh, like, you're this, I'm that. Like, we can't talk, you know. And I'm glad that you all create a space where you're talking with people who are from different backgrounds, different ideas within the left, and building, because that's really how you grow, as not just as a person, but as a revolutionary. We're constantly learning, constantly expanding. Like right now, like aside from reading like socialist and communist literature, I'm also trying to read about non-socialist and communist stuff. I'm trying to read about ancient history. I'm trying to read about, like, lately I've been really into like theology and just like learning about like different, like how different societies understand reality, cosmologies. And so I just implore people to stay curious, keep learning. Like, we're all constantly learning and growing, and don't assume that you always have the right answers, you know?
Yeah. And I think you touched, I think there was a constant theme in this discussion, is that Marxism, socialism, these aren't religions. This is a science. And it's all going to look different in every single place. You're not going to get the USSR in Haiti. You're not going to get the USSR in Honduras. Like socialism is going to look different in every country because their conditions are different. And that's what we need to analyze and apply the science of Marxism to.
Exactly. Well said, comrade. I couldn't have said it better.
Right. So before we wrap up, please let us know, let everyone know where they can find your work.
Yeah, so you can follow me at AntiConquista on all platforms. You can also follow my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ramiro Fúnez. Long as fuck, I know, but if you just look up Ramiro, you'll find it. We got those long Latino names, so it's all good. And then on Twitter, on Facebook and Twitter. The better, baby. Right, yeah.
True.
Right. And on Facebook and Twitter, Ramiro Comunista, you can find me there. But yeah, AntiConquista, you know, I try to do as much work with AntiConquista as possible, so you can follow me there as well.
Well, we love what you do. We love all the work that you've produced with AntiConquista. Please keep it up, and we look forward to having you on again soon.
Most def, comrade. Thanks.